Hello BookTube, it's Leah Cooper here, and today I am going to be bringing you my February reading wrap-up. So I don't know if this is going to come across on the camera, but I'm possibly getting sick, so I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly because I do have a couple other videos to film, and I don't want to totally lose my voice. February was an okay reading month. I read 16 things, totaling 1,734 pages. That's about 150 pages less than last month. And I realized that February is 3 days shorter than January, but some of this also had to do with, like, February was a weird month for me. The second week of the month, I lost power for several days. I didn't have internet for 5 days. So while I didn't have internet, I did do a lot of reading, but I also lost my loan on an audiobook I was listening to, and I couldn't listen to the audiobook because I was listening to it through my browser on my PC. So when I didn't have internet, I couldn't listen to it, and then I lost that loan, and I was halfway through that audiobook, and I put myself back on hold for it, but I haven't got it back. So that was something I just didn't get to finish this month. And then I had to wait for the other audiobooks that I had holds on to come in. But at basically the exact same time, my PC died. And so I usually listen to the bulk of my audiobooks while I'm playing video games. Like when I play a lot of Guild Wars 2 and I play a lot of Warframe. There's several activities in those games where there's no story, there's no dialogue. You might just be like farming something. And so it's really great to listen to an audiobook. And so with my computer dead, I couldn't do that. And so yeah, I don't know. I didn't get to listen to much this month, which was kind of frustrating. And yeah, but let's talk about what I did actually finish. Okay, so the first thing I actually finished was a reread of The Magpie Lord by KJ Charles when my power went out. I had a couple of physical books, but I kind of just wanted to read comfort reads. So I used my limited laptop battery life to read a couple of things off my Kindle. One of them was Magpie Lord. I also read the sequel to this, which is A Case of Possession, also by KJ Charles. These are historical, urban fantasy, romance mystery books. I've talked about them on my channel before because I really do love KJ Charles, and I've reread these several times, like I said, comfort reads. I rated them a little bit lower on the second read through. I think I gave the second one like a 3.5. Yeah, I gave the second one a 3.5 because it wasn't that great. Like when you've read it 3 times, you're just kind of like, it's fine. It's kind of fillery. It's not as good as some of the other ones. But, I definitely recommend this as a really great place to start with KJ Charles. Obviously, it is her first series, but it's a really solid series. Also, while the power was out, I finally read my copy of Cocaine Blues by Carrie Greenwood. This is the first novel in the Phryne Fisher mysteries. I don't actually know if that's what they're called. Miss Fisher Murder Mystery. I don't know what the series is called. There is a show of this. The BBC finally made this into a series. I think there's 2 seasons. The show is fantastic. I love it. I've owned Cocaine Blues for years. I think since before the series the television series came out. And I started reading it, but I just never finished it. So I finally went ahead and I finally sat down and read that while the power was out. That's really great. Or I should say, the pilot episode of the television series follows this first book pretty faithfully. So it's not like anything was surprising. Like I knew the plot. But it was still really charming. I think I gave it 4 stars. Will I be reading more? I don't really have a whole lot of time, but I might try to pick up some more. I'm also reading like the Elizabeth Peters Egyptian mysteries, Amelia Peabody mysteries, and I've been stalled out on reading those too. So it's like I feel like I probably shouldn't start another mystery series, but I liked this one. The next thing I read was Infinity's End, which is a multi-author science fiction anthology edited by Jonathan Strahan. I've done an entire review of this. I'll link it up above. Go ahead and check that out if you're interested. I gave this like solid 4.5, 5 stars. I really loved this collection. of short science fiction. I think if you're looking for a science fiction anthology, anything in the Infinity series, because it is a series of collections, I think any of the books from it you're gonna be probably happy with it, because I've read two and I've loved both. And then after that, I read the Unicorn Anthology, which is another multi-author collection. This is fantasy, and the theme is unicorns, and it's been edited by Peter S. Beagle. I received this as an ARC from NetGalley. It won't be published until April 19th, and I am actually going to be filming a review for this video after I film this, but it won't be going up until the publication date. Technically, I did finally sit down and individually rate each of the stories this afternoon while I was prepping for the video. And technically, if you average all those individual ratings, the anthology would get a 2.98, so effectively a 3-star for me. But frankly, if you factor in like enjoyment of reading it, it's like a 2.5 star. I'm not going to say anything else because, like I said, there will be a whole review coming out closer to the publication date. The next thing I read was The Queens of Innis Lear by Tessa Gratton. This was a long book, and even though I'm not feeling super great, I am going to try to take the time now to talk about this book because I gave it, did I give it a 3.5? I gave it a 3.5 stars. I can't, in all honesty, give it a 4, but I don't think it's necessarily a terrible book. I don't think it's a terrible book. So this is a fantasy take on King Lear, which is a Shakespearean play. King Lear is not one of the Shakespeares that I've ever studied academically, and nor is it like a favorite of mine, so I'm not going to talk about the play on any level because I can't do that academically. If someone wants to point me towards a Titus Andronicus retelling, A, I'd be really interested in that, and B, I could talk about it a lot more academically than King Lear. So I'm just going to focus on the book itself. And the book feels like a monster. I read it in hardcover, and it's only 575 pages, but I swear to God, there's a lot more words in this manuscript than you would typically find in a book of that page length, because it's like a big size hardcover. Words are small. Line spacing is small, so there are a lot of words jammed into those pages. That's one of the problems with it, not the interior design, but just the sheer length. So in this world, Innis Lear is an island that was created by a sorcerer witch hundreds of years ago. It was broken off from the mainland, founded as its own country, kind of like a take on English mythology. There were many warring houses until finally a king conquered all of the other warring houses and crowned himself king, renamed himself Lear after the witch who created the island, and founded a dynasty. Several hundred years later, the current king, Lear, of the island has 3 daughters, and he's gone fairly mad. On this island, there are 2 main schools of magic. There's star prophecy and earth magic. Earth magic tying into the roots of the trees of the islands and the root water of the island, and obviously the stars being the stars in the sky that control destiny, etc. And historically, these 2 sources of magic were revered together and used in conjunction with one another. However, when King Lear came to the throne, there was a prophecy that said his wife would be a foreigner, and on the 16th anniversary of her eldest daughter's birth, she would die. And lo and behold, that prophecy came true. She died on the 16th birthday of her eldest daughter, and at that point, in grief, Lear closed off all the wells and forbade the language of trees and the following of earth magic. He, having studied as a star priest, turned all of his attentions to the stars, and in the process kind of went mad. His favorite is his youngest daughter. He's on very bad terms with his eldest 2 daughters. it transpires, as in the play, that he assembles everyone to name his heir, and he puts forth a question to his daughters saying that whoever loves him best will be named his heir. And it's like a test, and he expects his youngest daughter to prove herself to be the most loyal and devoted, and so that he can name her his heir. But she doesn't play into his hands, and she's a bit insulted by all of this, and so then he exiles her, and just shit unfolds from there. In the book, we've got a lot of different points of view. There's a character called Ban the Fox, who's the bastard son of loyal Earl Aragol, and he has always loved Lear's youngest daughter, and because he loved her, and because he was a bastard whose stars were unfavorable, Lear and his father basically exiled him to be fostered in another kingdom. And he is a very slippery, morally gray character who's constantly changing his allegiance. And the elder two sisters blame their father for their mother's death. They suspect he poisoned her to fulfill his prophecies. And they hate him, they despise him, and they despise their younger sister for caring for him and in their minds siding with him. And they have their own political agendas. And so, like, you've got all these different characters, all these different points of view. In that kind of a situation, it's very rare for me to actually like all the point of view characters. And so that's one thing I will say about this book. I loved all the point of view characters. I actually thought they were all really good. There was never a point of view where I really went, oh, I don't want to read this point of view, because I thought the characters were all really fantastic. So point to Tessa Gratton for that. I also think the world building is really interesting. I thought the magic was fantastic. I thought the way the magic like interfered and shaped and affected everyone's lives was really interesting, without being hokey or too powerful, or without being too dry or systematic. It's not necessarily a magic system like the Brandon Sanderson School of Magic Systems. It's more along the lines, it reminds me more of maybe like Uprooted. I liked the different push-pulls of earls and kings and foreign countries and all that sort of stuff. It was very believable and interesting, and I liked being in the world. The thing that bugged me is the length. And it's not just because it was a long book. It was because that fundamentally there wasn't enough going on in this book to support the length of the story, as it turned out. I was, at several points in the book, the reading process was just unpleasant because it was so needlessly dense in places. And I found myself asking, could we cut 50 pages from this book without losing anything? And I kind of sat there, I thought, well, there's 5 parts. That would just be 10 pages cut from each part. So it'd be like 1.5 POV chapters or 1 POV cut from each part. And I was like, oh, that would be really easy. Could we cut 100 pages from this book without losing anything? I kind of sat up and I thought about it, and that'd be like, well, 2 point of view chapters from each part. Yeah, that'd be really easy to do. And I realized as I was, thinking about this and kind of struggling with the book, that this book is in many ways full of darlings. And what I mean by that is there's an expression in writerly advice circles that authors should kill their darlings. There's a lot of times where authors write scenes or even characters or subplots that are dear to them, that they like. And this is really more specific to scenes. They like the scene, they enjoyed writing the scene, but fundamentally it doesn't enhance the story, it doesn't move anything forward, whether that's plot or character progression, character development. And generally speaking, if you could remove the scene and change nothing because it adds nothing, you probably should remove it. That's not necessarily the case for every single darling, but in a book like this, there were a lot of darlings. There were a lot of moments where I'd read 20 pages and I'd stop and I'd say, okay, so I just read 2 different points of view chapters, 20 pages, nothing happened. Like, actually nothing happened. These are just examples of darlings that really could have been easily trimmed out of the book to speed up the overall pace of the story. Okay, you can make an argument that authors should be allowed to keep their darlings in the book. It's a bad piece of advice, whatever. That's fine. You can argue that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who might enjoy reading them. Okay. But there's another problem with the length and density of this book, and that's we have multiple timelines happening in this book. We've got the main timeline, and then we have a lot of events that have happened in the last 30 years, primarily in the last 12 years, but flashbacks go back as far as 30 years. And we have a lot of flashbacks, which I am fine with. I love a good flashback. I love a good non-linear narrative. I also love discovering things. And so there's a lot of unanswered questions starting from the very beginning of the book that, you know, we get answers to as the narrative progresses. Great. Problem derives when we discover something through the actions and the dialogue and the interior thoughts of the characters, especially in the present, that then the author feels it's necessary to then have a flashback that's 6 to 10 pages long that regurgitates the information we've already figured out for ourselves. There's this thing that happens in the last quarter of the book where there's a witch, Brona, who was a close companion of the queen, the Queen of Innis Lear. And she finally reveals a piece of information to Elia. And in the present. Okay, that's fine. Cool. We got this piece of information. It changes how we think about things. The problem is that in the exact next scene, we have a flashback that's 6 to 10 pages long where Brona reveals the exact same information to someone else 11 years ago. Repetitive. Okay. Problem is, go forward a couple more chapters, Brona reveals the exact same information to one of the other sisters. And then there's another flashback to 12 years before where we see the information that Brona has revealed to 3 characters now at 3 different points in this book being acted out in excruciating detail by the principal character. So we get the exact same piece of information revealed to us 4 times, and it takes like 30 pages, and we just don't need that. Like, you can reveal something once, but like revealing the exact same thing 3 different times, plus, there are other instances where, other characters like Elia is revealing it to other people. So it's extremely repetitive. It really brought the last like 20% of the book to a stumbling halt pace-wise. And that's just kind of endemic to how a lot of these scenes feel in this book. And I don't want to make assumptions about Tessa Gratton, but just the way that is constructed suggests to me she doesn't trust her reader to, figure anything out for themselves. Because, we have to have a flashback spending 6 pages talking about something that needed a paragraph or no flashback at all because readers are smart. So it needed some editing. It was bloated. And it felt like the author didn't trust the readers to understand things. And it had a lot of darlings. So it was a good story. I was compelled by the plot itself. I wanted to get to the end and see how it resolved. And then I was really disappointed in the ending. In many ways just because, man, it had a pace going. It finally picked up a little bit of pace and momentum. And then Tessa Gratton slammed on the brakes and halted the momentum of the book for the last 30 pages. And it was excruciating. I can't, in any good faith, give it a 4-star. If you like really slow-paced books that are a little repetitive in places, it's good, though. The characters are good. The plot's good. The world building's good, for the most part. There's just not enough plot to actually hold up the weight of the book. Is really the big problem. There's something else I wanted to say about it. I'm trying to remember what it is. Okay. I'm just going to end this here because I've rambled enough. I was hoping I'd read one more thing this month, but that didn't happen. So there you go. That's everything I read in February. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you have any questions about any of the books I've mentioned in this video, go ahead and feel free to leave a comment down below. Or let me know what you thought of any of the books I've talked about here. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next review. Bye.